Okay, so with these parts, I'm gonna be building a tiny 6-liter 4070 Ti Super gaming PC. And some of these parts I've used before, but the CPU and the GPU, they're both completely new. So obviously I'm curious to see what the gaming performance is here, but most of all, I wanna know what the thermals and the fan noise sound like, especially with this new GPU. And this is all gonna be with parts that you can buy yourself, so there's not gonna be any sort of modding or special equipment needed to put it all together. So let's take a look at all the parts that I actually chose for this build and then see what it's like to put it all together.
This video is sponsored by FlexiSpot. A few weeks back, FlexiSpot sent over one of their standing desks, the E7 Plus, a premium 4-leg standing desk that can handle a ton of weight. This one can hold up to 540 pounds while extending its height from as low as 26 inches from the ground up to 51.6. Now, I don't have a ton of room in my studio, so I went with a smaller 48 by 30 size. And I also put on some casters so that I can easily wheel it around as I needed, but there are quite a few different options if you're wanting a different material or different color desktop. Now, I've been very happy with it. It's incredibly stable and sturdy. I've actually been using it in a lot of my most recent build videos. I've also paired this up with one of their chairs. So this is the C7. It's a premium ergonomic office chair. This one caught my eye, admittedly, because aesthetically, I just think it's pretty good looking. They've got a few different color options. I ended up going with black because, you know, it's a pretty safe choice. But what really sold me on it was the amount of adjustability. Now, a chair that's comfortable for one person might not work for another. And because of the level of customization here, it seems far more likely that I'll be able to adjust it just the way I need to for me. But if for whatever reason you're not happy with it, FlexiSpot does offer a 30-day return policy. So it really takes the risk out of just trying it. But if you do decide to keep it, you also get a 10-year warranty. And look, I've had this one now for over a month, and it's far more comfortable and supportive compared to my old one. It just fits me perfectly. And the big bonus for me is actually the footrest. Now, this is an add-on that I felt could be really nice if I just needed a few minutes to sit back and relax, to take a break, or even if I just need a few minutes just to think. Now, FlexiSpot is having an anniversary sale. It's starting on August 21st, so definitely check that out if you're interested in picking one up yourself.
Okay, and starting with the case, this is the Velka 7. Now, Velcase cases have been, beloved in the SFF community for a long time now, but I would say the Velka 7 probably gets the least amount of attention out of the three in their lineup. And my guess is that it's because both the Velka 5 and the Velka 7, both of them can fit a 2-slot GPU. So most GPUs that would fit in the Velka 7 would also fit in the Velka 5. And when you're going this small, usually people want to go as small as they can. But that does kind of change today with the GPU that I'll be using. Now, one of the nice things about the 7 is that it can fit a traditional SFX power supply. You've got a lot more higher quality options and they're just easier to get a hold of. I would say though, still my biggest disappointment with the Velka 7 is that it does only fit a 2-slot GPU. Because you do get a lot more CPU clearance in the 7 versus the 5, but I almost wish that they would have sacrificed some of that CPU clearance so that you could fit like a 2.5 or even a 2.25 slot GPU. That would differentiate it from the 5 a little bit more in my opinion. So this is a new 4070 Ti Super from Gigabyte. It's from a line I think they're calling AI Top. Based off the name, I think it's pretty clear that this is geared more towards maybe workstations or AI related tasks. If I'm being honest, I don't really care about that too much, at least not for the purposes of this video. But what is nice about it, as you can guess, because it's gonna fit into a Velka, it is a true 2-slot card. But whenever you look up the dimensions for this, don't get fooled by it, because even though it does say it's 260 millimeters in length, that doesn't account for the 12-volt high power cable connector that's actually located at the back. I should also mention that Inno3D does have a 4070 Ti Super that would fit in the Velka 5. I'm located in the US, so I don't really know exactly how to get one, but this card I was able to order myself just right off of Newegg. This is far more accessible, at least to somebody like me. So I do actually still have the card in the box here, but I did take a sneak peek at it before creating this video, and I could immediately tell that the build quality on this card is top notch. It's got an all metal frame, so it's pretty weighty, but it's also a blower style cooler, which could potentially have higher noise levels, but we'll see once we have this all put together. Now, I'm not gonna go too much into detail about the differences between the 4070 Ti Super and the non-Super. I actually created a whole video about that if you're interested in seeing it. But what I do wanna mention is that you do get a pretty decent upgrade in VRAM if you go with the Super. So this is gonna make it better for games that may need to utilize it down the road and some productivity workloads that might need it, like Blender. I'm also going to be pairing this up with the brand new AMD Ryzen 9700X. And look, what can I say about this? So if you've watched any of the reviews, you probably already have the gist about these new CPUs. I did buy this one myself because, this is a tech channel. I'm obviously going to want to try the new stuff. So when you compare the 9700X versus the 7700, so both of those being 65 watts with 8 cores and 12 threads, you're getting a small increase in performance and efficiency, like in the single digits, which, I mean, more performance is not a bad thing. This is just isn't a large increase by any means. Now, that's not really the problem. The real problem is that you can pick up the 7700 for $100 cheaper and get very similar performance, which in turn makes the 9700X a pretty bad deal. Now, AMD wants you to compare the 9700X to the 7700X so that when you make the comparisons in the MSRP, it appears to be $40 cheaper. But when you compare it to the 7700, which is a more apt comparison regardless of what the naming scheme wants you to believe, it's actually $30 more expensive. So at this time, I really wouldn't recommend buying it, but based off the current reviews that are out, you're gonna get similar performance at a cheaper price. Okay, so now with all of that out of the way, let's actually put this thing together.
Nothing you can do this time. I don't want anyone, know me or not. See me at my lowest, you don't have to drop anything for me. Just keep your plans. I hope that you never have to drop. Used to be you and me, matching Kawasaki Z's, right around 270 in Kawasaki T's. Don't fight a jets, matching energy. Trying to forget that we're in ejection seat. So please, keep it in mind. Check on your friends every once in a while. Even if they say, I don't want anyone, know me or not. See me at my lowest, you don't have to drop. Don't have to drop by, nothing you can do this time. I don't want anyone, know me or not. See me at my lowest, you don't have to drop anything for me. Just keep your plans. I hope that you never have to drop. At the risk of feeling dumb, check it. It's not worth the risk of losing a friend. Even if they say, just keep your plans. I hope that you never have to drop.
If you want to see more specifics on the build process with the Velka 7, I did a video on the channel a few months ago that goes through that more in detail, so I didn't want to rehash that again here. Make sure to go check that out if you're interested. Now, I didn't have any clearance issues or anything like that. The card fits in the case perfectly, and I've actually used the CPU cooler in the previous Velka 7 video, so I already knew it would fit well. I did run into an issue with my Gigabyte board when updating the BIOS. That's likely user error, but I swapped it out for the MSI B650i just for now. Now, taking a quick look at what you can expect as far as performance goes, this would be best suited with a high refresh rate 1440p monitor. You can easily hit those higher frame rates in the latest games using the highest in-game presets. Now, after around 10 minutes stress testing in Firmark, the GPU is pulling its max TDP at around 285 watts and getting a little bit warm than what you'll see on more gaming focused cards that have, big overbuilt coolers. Now, it's settling in at around 84 degrees Celsius. This isn't too hot for normal operation or anything alarming, but it is going to be warmer than others. But with that does come some pretty distracting fan noise. This by no means is a quiet machine under load. There's a noticeable whistling noise as well, so I think there's some turbulence going on here. I would say that it's not as bad as like a gaming laptop, but it is kind of leaning closer to that. The 9700X is kept at a very reasonable 75 degrees Celsius average after running a 10-minute multi-core stress test in Cinebench 2024. Now, this is a 65-watt CPU, and the AXP90 X47 full copper cooler I'm using is rated for up to 145 watts. It is clearly having no issues with the CPU. And it's only a little more expensive than the regular aluminum ones, but I do think it's worth the extra cost in my opinion. So those are the synthetics, but what does real world gaming performance actually look like? So starting with a brand new release, this is Black Myth Wukong, a pretty demanding Unreal Engine 5 game. I've got it set to 4K with the very high preset using DLSS, but without frame generation. And I'm going to be using the benchmark tool for this one. The game just released yesterday, and I'm not really sure if there's any spoilers in the beginning, so I'm going to just try to play it safe here. I mean, first off, the game looks absolutely incredible. We're getting upwards of 90 to 100 frames per second, and the GPU is pulling 266 watts. and sitting at around 84 degrees Celsius, pretty similar to what we were seeing in Furmark. And the CPU is sitting at around 70 degrees. So now let's do another run, but without DLSS, just to kind of see what the performance we could expect without the upscaling. Now, I don't really expect anyone with this setup to not utilize those features available, but just as a frame of reference, I'm getting over 60 frames per second still. Now, this might actually be pushing the GPU harder than Furmark was, because I actually seen the peak GPU temp at 85 degrees Celsius. Then jumping into Ghost of Tsushima, 4K, high preset, DLSS quality, and frame generation off. Very similar thermals to Wukong, and over 100 frames per second here. Now, turning off DLSS, we are still looking at over 60 frames when roaming around the open world here. And then the last one is Cyberpunk 2077. Now, this is kind of a go-to benchmark, of course, at this point. It's more than playable using DLSS and all of that. This is at the Ray Tracing Ultra preset with DLSS and again without frame generation. I'm just curious to see what the absolute worst case scenario is here, which is going to be maxing this game out with path tracing. And look, it's pretty impressive. At around 45 frames per second, this is one of the most demanding settings available today, and it's still totally playable. It's like a solid 40 plus, so the actual experience here is pretty smooth actually. Look, if you're not worried about having a quiet system, then this could be a pretty interesting option. There aren't very many 2-slot 4070 Ti Super cards out there, and this is far easier to get a hold of than the Inno3D one is, at least if you're in the US. It's pretty clear why this is aimed more as a, AI workstation type of card, because it is just louder under sustained load like this. Nonetheless, it performs in line with what I would expect from a 4070 Ti Super. Either way, it's pretty impressive to be able to fit this much performance into a 6-liter case that's smaller than an Xbox Series X. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.